The rain was relentless, hammering the streets of Seattle like a drumbeat of despair. But I stood frozen under the awning of a coffee shop, watching him, Elliot, laughing with someone new. His arm was slung casually around a man with sharp cheekbones and a dazzling smile. Their heads tilted close, oblivious to the storm. My heart cracked. A quiet fracture, as I realized he'd moved on, leaving our 3 years of whispered promises to drown in the downpour. I'd always known Elliot was a wildfire, beautiful, untamed, and impossible to hold. We met in college. 2 boys from opposite worlds, me, Caleb, the quiet artist with paint-stained fingers, and him, the charismatic law student who could charm a room with a single grin. Our love was a canvas of stolen kisses in art studios, late-night drives along the Puget Sound, and dreams of a future we swore we'd build together. But wildfires burn out. And 6 months ago, Elliot's spark for me faded. He said he needed space, a vague excuse that left me grasping at shadows. Now, here he was, with someone else, while I stood soaked and invisible. I could have stormed over, demanded answers, but instead, I turned away. My pride was a fragile thing, but it held me upright. I'd leave quietly, let him think I was fine, and maybe, just maybe, he'd feel the weight of my absence. That night, I packed a single suitcase, left a note on our shared apartment's counter, "I'm gone. Be happy," and drove south to Portland, chasing a fresh start. I wanted him to regret losing me, to feel the ache I carried. And deep down, I hoped he would. Portland was a city of bridges and fog, a place to lose yourself and find something new. I rented a cramped loft above a bookstore, its walls lined with stories I'd never read but felt akin to. My days became a rhythm of sketching at a local gallery, sipping coffee in quirky cafes, and dodging memories of Elliot. But he lingered in every quiet moment, his laugh, his habit of humming off-key, the way his hazel eyes crinkled when he was truly happy. I wondered if his new lover noticed those things, or if Elliot was just a fleeting thrill to him. The gallery where I worked was a haven, run by a kind older woman named Marla who saw the shadows in my eyes but never pried. One rainy afternoon, as I hung a series of abstract paintings, a stranger walked in, a man with warm brown skin and a quiet intensity. His name was Julian, a photographer visiting from San Francisco, and his gentle questions about my art cracked open a door I'd kept locked. "Your work feels like it's holding a secret," he said, studying a canvas streaked with blues and grays. I smiled, deflecting, but his gaze held no judgment, only curiosity. Julian became a regular at the gallery, stopping by with coffee or stories of his travels. He was different from Elliot, steady where Elliot was chaotic, thoughtful where Elliot was impulsive. One evening, as we sat on the loft's fire escape, sharing a bottle of cheap wine, he asked about the sadness in my sketches. I told him everything, not just about Elliot, but the way love had carved me hollow. Julian listened, his hand brushing mine, and for the first time in months, I felt seen. Not as a ghost of someone's past, but as Caleb, whole and enough. Weeks turned into months, and Julian's presence wove into my life like a soft melody. We explored Portland's hidden corners, food carts, record stores, the misty trails of Forest Park. He taught me to see beauty in the mundane, capturing moments with his camera, my laughter caught mid-breath, my silhouette against a sunset. I was healing, not because Julian fixed me, but because he reminded me I could. Yet, even as I fell for him, a part of me wondered if Elliot ever thought of me, if he regretted choosing someone else. Back in Seattle, Elliot's world was unraveling. His new lover, Ryan, was everything he thought he wanted: polished, ambitious, a perfect match for his law firm's glossy image. But Ryan's charm was surface deep, his affection conditional. Elliot missed the warmth of our late-night talks, the way I'd challenge his ideas without judgment, the quiet safety of our love. He'd see my art pop up on social media sketches I posted from the gallery, and each one felt like a knife twisting in his chest. He'd scroll through my posts, searching for clues about my life, my happiness, and finding none of the answers he craved. One night, after a fight with Ryan over something trivial, Elliot drove to our old apartment, now empty, and found my note still on the counter. "I'm gone. Be happy." The words burned. He hadn't been happy. Not really. Ryan was a distraction, a way to fill the void I'd left. But it wasn't enough. He started texting me. Hesitant messages at first: "Saw your art. It's incredible." But I didn't respond. My silence was my shield, and I wasn't ready to let it down. In Portland, Julian and I were growing closer, our connection deepening through shared vulnerabilities. He told me about his own heartbreaker relationship that ended because he was too afraid to be honest about his fears. "I don't want to make that mistake again," he said one night, his voice soft as we lay on a blanket under the stars at Mount Tabor. His hand found mine, and when he kissed me, it was gentle but certain, like a promise. I kissed him back, but a flicker of doubt lingered. Could I truly let go of Elliot? By the time spring arrived, Portland felt like home, but the past wasn't done with me. One gray morning, as I sketched in the gallery, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I ignored it, but the voicemail that followed stopped me cold. It was Elliot, his voice raw, unraveling. "Caleb, I messed up. I need to see you. Please." My heart lurched, torn between the life I was building and the one I'd left behind. I didn't call back, but his words echoed, pulling me into a storm I thought I'd escaped. Elliot's voicemail was a ghost that haunted me for days, slipping into the quiet spaces between my sketches and conversations with Julian. I didn't tell Julian about it, not because I didn't trust him, but because I wasn't sure what it meant to me. Portland's spring was vibrant, with cherry blossoms painting the city pink. But inside, I was caught in a tug-of-war between moving forward and looking back. Julian sensed the shift in me. One evening, as we walked along the Willamette River, he stopped and turned to me, his dark eyes searching. "You've been quiet, Caleb." "Is it me?" His voice was steady, but there was a vulnerability there that made my chest ache. I wanted to tell him about Elliot, about the voicemail, but the word stuck. Instead, I squeezed his hand and said, "It's just old ghosts. I'm here with you." He nodded, but I could see the question lingering in his gaze. Meanwhile, in Seattle, Elliot was spiraling. Ryan had moved out after a blowout fight, leaving Elliot alone in an apartment that felt too big, too empty. He'd started drinking more, staying up late, replaying every moment of our relationship, every argument, every laugh, every time I'd looked at him like he was my entire world. He'd thrown it away, chasing something shinier, and now the regret was a weight he couldn't shake. He started driving to places we used to: Goth Diner, where we'd shared milkshakes, the pier where we'd watched the stars, and each one was a reminder of what he'd lost. Elliot's texts grew more frequent, each one a plea for a response. "I know I hurt you, Caleb. I was an idiot. Can we just talk? I need to explain. I read them in secret, my thumb hovering over the reply button. But I never pressed it. Part of me wanted to hear him out, to know if his regret was real. But another part, the part that had rebuilt itself in Portland, knew that opening that door might unravel everything I'd gained. Julian, meanwhile, was becoming my anchor. He invited me to a photography exhibit he was hosting, a collection of black and white portraits that captured raw, unguarded moments. One photo stopped me in my tracks. It was me, laughing, my head thrown back, sunlight filtering through my hair. "You're my favorite subject," Julian said, his voice low, and I felt a warmth I hadn't known since Elliot. That night, we danced in his tiny apartment to a scratchy vinyl record, our bodies swaying in a rhythm that felt like home. But even as I leaned into his embrace, Elliot's voicemail played in my mind like a song I couldn't forget. One weekend, Julian suggested a road trip to the Oregon coast. We drove to Cannon Beach, where the Pacific roared against jagged rocks, and walked along the shore, the wind tangling our hair. As we sat on a driftwood log, watching Haystack Rock loom against the horizon, Julian turned to me. "Caleb, I'm falling for you," he said, his voice steady despite the crashing waves. "But I need to know you're all in." His words were a challenge, a gentle push to let go of the past. I wanted to say I was ready, but Elliot's shadow loomed, and I could only nod, my throat tight. Back in Seattle, Elliot was unraveling further. He'd taken a leave from his law firm, unable to focus, and spent his days tracking down any trace of me. He found the Portland Gallery's website, saw my name listed among the artists, and felt a surge of hope. He drove to Portland on impulse, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. He didn't know what he'd say, only that he needed to see me, to beg for a second chance. When Elliot walked into the gallery, I was hanging a new Paisea swirling abstract of reds and golds, inspired by Julian's warmth. The bell above the door chimed, and I turned, freezing as I saw him. His hazel eyes were tired, rimmed with shadows, but they held the same intensity that had once pulled me in. "Caleb," he said, his voice breaking, "I'm so sorry." The room spun, and for a moment, it was just us, the world falling away. But then I remembered Julian, the life I was building, and the choice I had to make. I led Elliot outside, away from Marla's curious gaze, to a quiet corner of the street. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. He looked at me, raw and exposed, and said, "I messed up. I thought I wanted something else. But it's you, Caleb. It's always been you." His words were everything I'd wanted to hear 6 months ago, but now they felt like a weight, pulling me back to a place I'd fought to leave. I told him about Julian, not to hurt him, but to be honest. "I'm building something real here," I said. "I don't know if I can go back." Elliot's face crumpled, and for the first time, I saw the depth of his regret, not just for losing me, but for losing himself. He reached for my hand, but I stepped back, my heart splitting. "I need time," I said, and he nodded, tears in his eyes, before walking away into the Portland mist. That night, I told Julian everything. We sat on the fire escape, the city humming below, and I laid bare my confusion, my fear of choosing wrong. Julian listened, his hand steady on mine, and said, "I don't want to be your second choice. Caleb. But I'll wait. Because you're worth it. His words were a lifeline. But they also forced me to confront the truth. I had to choose between the past I'd loved and the future I could have. The days after Elliot's visit were a blur of indecision. I'd see his face in every shadow, hear his voice in every quiet moment. But Julian's presence grounded me. Portland's summer was blooming, the city alive with festivals and sunlight. Yet I felt caught in a limbo of my own making. I knew I had to choose not just between two men, but between who I was and who I wanted to be. Julian gave me space, but his patience was a quiet pressure. We still spent time together cooking dinners in his cluttered kitchen, hiking the trails of Tryon Creek, laughing over his terrible attempts at sketching. But there was a new tension, an unspoken question in his eyes. Are you mine? Or are you still his? I wanted to answer, to tell him I was all in. But Elliot's regret had reopened wounds I thought had healed. Elliot didn't stop reaching out. His texts were softer now, less desperate but more honest. I'm working on myself. Caleb. I want to be someone you'd be proud of. He sent me a photo of a painting he'd bought, a vibrant piece by a local artist. A reminder of the galleries we used to visit together. Each message was a thread pulling me back. But I didn't respond. Not yet. One evening, as I sat in the gallery sketching, Marla approached me. You're carrying too much, kid, she said, her voice gentle but firm. Love isn't about who hurts more or who regrets harder. It's about who makes you feel like you're enough. Her words hit like a revelation, forcing me to confront the truth I'd been avoiding. I'd been holding on to Elliot's regret as a way to feel valued, but it was keeping me from moving forward. I drove to Cannon Beach again, alone this time, needing the ocean's clarity. As I stood on the shore, the waves crashing against Haystack Rock, I thought about the boy I'd been with Elliot, hopeful, trusting, but always chasing his light. With Julian, I was different, stronger, more myself, not a shadow of someone else's fire. I realized then that love wasn't about proving a point or winning someone back. It was about choosing the person who saw me, not the idea of me. When I returned to Portland, I asked Julian to meet me at Mount Tabor. The park was quiet, the city's lights twinkling below, and I told him everything: Elliot's visit, my confusion, my fear of letting go. I've been holding on to him because I thought it meant I mattered. I admitted, my voice shaking. But you make me feel like I'm enough, just as I am. Julian's eyes softened, and he pulled me close, his warmth chasing away the last of my doubts. I choose you, I said, and when we kissed, it felt like a beginning. Elliot's final message came a week later, a letter mailed to the gallery. He wrote about his journey, therapy, self-reflection, the realization that he'd taken me for granted. I'll always love you, Caleb, he wrote, but I know you're where you're meant to be. Be happy. I read it with tears in my eyes, not for what we'd lost, but for the closure it gave us both. I didn't write back, but I hoped he'd find his own peace. Julian and I grew stronger. Our love a quiet, steady thing built on trust and honesty. We moved in together that fall, our loft filled with art and photographs, a testament to the life we were building. My sketches became brighter, bolder, reflecting the joy I'd found. And though Elliot's shadow would always be a part of me, it no longer held power. I'd left calmly, hoping he'd regret it. And he did, but in the end, it was my own heart I'd set free. The story wasn't about revenge or winning. It was about learning to love myself enough to choose what was right for me. Julian taught me that. And in his arms, I found a home I never thought I'd have. As we stood on the fire escape one night, watching the city glow, I realized that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go and let love find you again.